What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Hot Corner Podcast. We have all three of us here today. We're going to go through Tyler's highlighted player for this week. It's going to be a two-parter, probably because it's going to be a long meeting and I'll have to break it up, but that is okay. So, what's up, guys?
How's
Um,
it going?
yeah, it's gone. If the boats are flowing, I'm a rowing.
Your camera is angled differently today, getting a new
Yeah,
look.
different.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah,
He's really getting that jawline showing that he does not have.
feisty.
Yeah, jawline.
Yeah, jaw. Um, all right. So I just get down into it.
Get down and dirty, big dog. What are we
Come
calling this
on,
segment?
T-Dog.
I don't know. Do we want to call it the oldies but goldies, or I
Oldies but
like Tyler's throwbacks.
Tyler's. See, that's pretty casual. I like oldies but goldies, and I also like the nightclub because you be throwing that shit back. But if you want to call it
Talking
Ty
about dudes.
Tyler's
Pause.
throwbacks, then that's fine.
Yeah, we still throwing it back here. Um, all right. Today's highlighted player is Corey Spaghetti. Spaghetti. McGady? I don't even know how to say his name, honestly, in the truest way possible. But regardless, I'm gonna start off with the overview of his career, right? 827 games played. And of those 827 games, he was averaging 16 points a game, right? Oh, it said 4.9 rebounds, but we'll call it five with two assists. But throughout his career, he was shooting at a 45% from the field. And it was a 32% from three, but he didn't really throw up that many threes. 82 from the free throw, and his effective field goal rating was a 47.9, so 48. With his career high in points was 39 and his highest rebounds a game, rebounding in a game was 19. Not too bad because he shifted through like 10 different teams. No, like five different teams. He played the two spot as a shooting guard. He also played the three spot as small forward, and he also played at the four spot at the power forward position. So I mean, it's not too bad. One of the things that really stood out to me when I was looking at his stats was he never shot below 40% from the field, except for his last three seasons. But he barely played. So I thought that was kind of kind of cool. Kind of cool. Um, Highlighting his best season with Golden State in the 2009-2010 season. He played 70 games and he actually started 49. Um, but he was attempting like 12 and a half field goals a game and he was shooting a 51% from the field. 51% through 70 games. That's kind of, I don't know. To me, that was pretty good, especially in that era of basketball. Speaking of that era,
Error, error.
speaking of that era, uh, good God, of basketball at the time, he was attempting. He went to the line like eight times a game, and he was making 83% of those shots. And that season is when he was 30. And I have a conspiracy that once you turn the dirty 30 is when you kind of like you're at your peak, right? Because he was averaging 19.8 points a game. Oh, call that 20. So I mean that was like the only time that he actually averaged that high. But going to the playoffs, when he was on the Clippers, that was kind of impressive. 2006. They won the first round against Denver, and through that whole matchup, It was 5 games because they won 4-1. Um, he was the one to go to Elton Brand was on that team. Elton Brand's
Dude,
a big dude.
Ellen Brand low key like if that dude had done like won a finals or anything like that, he'd be up there in that conversation because he was a 2010 player for a million years.
He was carrying that Clippers team. Like that, the 2006 Clippers, he was carrying them. But the thing that surprised me is that Maggette went to the line.
McGady.
He went to 33 times in that series in five games. He went to the line 33 times and he was shooting 88%. That dude can shoot throughout his career. It shows that he can shoot, and that's why I sauced you up so many times with Maggette in 2K, Brendan, because he is
No,
he is that dog.
McGetty was really good in that like early 2000s Clippers team. Like when they just kind of ran into the Timberwolves problem where they couldn't quite make it over that hump. Like McGetty was pretty damn solid. If I recall, he was a 2 or a 3 on that team. Like as far as like he was a second or a third option. Is
I think it was the third because they also had
that
Sam
Lou
Cassell.
Williams? Oh, that's
That's
okay. Sam Cassell. Lou Williams is
yeah,
later.
yeah. And then they also had Sean Livingston on that team.
Sean Livingston. Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
Nah.
insane.
it's
But
kind of funny with Corey Maggette, and I'll just say this: you can definitely tell when they moved him to a bigger man role, like the power forward position, because he went from like 2 to like 2.5 to 3 3-point attempts a game to 1.7, 1.2, like, and that you could just tell that they were playing him in such a big man role, and then his rebounds went up from 3 to 6 and
yeah,
then stagnant to 5 for a while. And he was always a tough guy to go get the board and everything. So I mean, he did his job, and he wasn't a lack of a playmaker either. In that 20 or 2004 2005 season, he averaged 3.5 assists, and from a small forward position, I'll take that. You
yeah.
know, when you're a shooting
Especially in
guard,
that era.
right? And he was averaging 22 points per game, so he was kind of their main shooter around the perimeter. He didn't shoot very well from three, but he took a decent amount of shots. He was efficient from the inside of the arc, and I think in reality, he was just a bucket getter. He
Yeah,
was
he
one of those
was.
guys that you look up to learn how to dominate the mid range and the outside shot at such a young age into the early 2000s.
You want to know something funny? He's bald.
Yeah, and he wears
He's
a headband. It's quite hilarious.
he's bald. He's bald. But I will say that the only playoff run that he did have with the Clippers, he did shine. He was showing out because his team wasn't bad. They were going up against the Denver team where they really only had Carmelo. Carmelo still balled out, but it
Hey,
was
I
just
was there.
Carmelo. Well, still. But when they won that, they gave the Suns a run for their money after they won that round too,
Pace and
because they
Space
had
Suns.
they had Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, they had
Sean,
Sean Marion.
Joe Johnson,
Um, dude, they had who else did they had? They had Barbosa.
Barbosa. Yep.
Oh my
Another
God, Boris Diaw.
another unbelievable bucket getter.
Dude, I'm just saying, and they lost 3-4, so they almost had him.
Won
They
game
almost had
seven.
him. I don't think they were going to go any further than that because that's like the legion of fucking freaking Dirk Nowitzki with the Mavs, and then you got the Heat with Dwayne Wade and everybody. So I mean,
It
I
was
don't
that.
know.
It
It's
was mainly the Spurs, the early
it's
2000 Spurs.
it was hard, but the whole playoff run, um, he Corey shot 46% from the field, 91% from the free throw line, and with how many times he goes to the line, that's insane. That's ridiculous. And averaging 7 boards a game. Like that's I don't know. I
Yeah,
was just looking at it
if you
and
think
I was
about it,
just
just in a free throw standpoint, he's basically getting 9 points per game just off his free throws. That's a
exactly.
big mark, and when it comes to back then basketball, because in reality, games were only going like 90 to 90. It wasn't this 120 to 120 like we are now. Another cool thing. and I guess maybe it's not a cool thing, but he was a bucket getter. Don't get me wrong. Never made an All-Star appearance. He was a six man of the year vote twice. He was six man
10th and
seven,
7th.
six man 10, so he never really shined. Like he has zero awards. If you look at this guy on paper, just looking at award standpoint, he's a bum because he doesn't have anything. But man, he's one of those guys that you would take on any team because he played decent defense. He could go get a rebound, and he could get you a bucket. He could get you an absolute bucket. He kind of reminds me of like a more athletic Tyler Hero. You know what I mean? But Tyler Hero, I guess, doesn't really get rebounds. He's pure scoring. But that's just how Corey Maggette was. And that's why I always get torched by him in 2K because they just juice his stats up for not
Yeah.
having these unbelievable
He
stats.
could make any three known to man. Lord knowing that the most threes that he's ever taken in a game was like 3,
Right.
and his
He's got
percentage was
Robert
like
Ory
20.
energy.
That's what, yeah,
He's
that's a
insane.
better standpoint. Robert Ory.
Dude, it's
Dude,
insane.
this was a great choosing for highlight spotlight. The only reason why he chose is because he busted my ass with them in 2K a couple times. So
Every time I'm on the Clippers, baby, James Harden and Corey Maggette.
that's how you know the
Honestly, that
Clippers
was
organization is sad because Corey Maggetti's on their all-time lineup.
Yeah.
that was a really fun era of basketball to watch. Like the 2006 like run and gun D'Antoni Suns. The Clippers were coming into the Lob City era, a few years removed. Like you saw the formation of the big three in Boston. Like there were a lot of bucket getters back then. Like they were still hella talented
It
in
was a
the
grit,
Oceans.
grit and grind.
Yeah, I think it
Grit and
was
grind Grizzlies, yeah, with our own Mike Conley.
right. Yeah, I think it was just a good transition into like the basketball we know today. And like people don't understand, man. You have to get to this point to get to the point that we're at right now. We had to go through these times where games were 90 to 90, but man, these were fun games. Like that's the great thing about basketball, man. You can look at the past. Like I feel like if you look at past like baseball and football, it's not that fun. It's not that exciting. But the transition between the 2000s, the 90s to the 2000s to 2010s is unbelievable. Where in the 90s we weren't taking threes at all. 2000s we were slowly implementing it, and then in the 2010s that's when we started hucking up threes, and it seems to be a high scoring affair. So I really enjoy kind of the transition that it's been in the past 3 decades.
Yeah,
That's
I
all I
feel
have.
like with the NBA, you can like as opposed to other sports, and I can't really speak to baseball a whole lot because I don't watch it much anymore. But like in the NBA, you can almost see like really defined like cutoff points. For like, all right, this was the Jordan era, mid '80s or I guess late '80s to late '90s, and then you got the Kobe era, you got the San Antonio Spurs era. Then the offense starts picking up. Now we're kind of in like the post Steph Curry era where like offenses are just becoming more and more efficient. Like the eras are so well defined in basketball as opposed to like football or like golf or any other sport.
Bowling.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a really good way to put it because I mean in reality we've always had a face of the league. And once LeBron's gone, they're gonna have to start a new era. And once Steph's gone, because I mean, Steph's only a couple years younger than LeBron, maybe 4 or 5. And
Steph's 36, I think.
right, and he's probably leaning on retiring shortly here too. You're gonna have to find a new face. Kevin Durant, like the guys me and Tyler grew up on watching, are all starting to trickle away, man. Carmelo already left, Dwight already left, so now we have like LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry. Like those are
James Harden.
those are the guys. Yeah, James Harden. Those are the guys we grew up on, and it's starting to fizzle away. And now we got to find new faces, and that's going to be kind of the transition right now of what I think would be the next segment is these second year guys. So these second year guys, I think, can start building that era. And I don't know what this era would be called, but honestly, I think we're getting back to that grit and grind. I think we're not shooting as well in the 3 point line, and I think we're getting back to very high intense defense, driving the lane, athletic playmaking, and I'm gonna transition into it. The Thompson twins, both Asur and Amen Thompson. One plays for the Pistons, that's a Sir, and Amen plays for the Rockets, and both of them show out by giving us 110% on the defensive effort, being at a height of about 6'5" to 6'7". I know Amen's 6'7". I think Asur is a little bit shorter at 6'5", but both of them play the two position and can guard 2, 3, 4. Like you don't see that very often, especially with young guys. Young guys kind of refuse to play that high stellar defense, and these guys give you that every single fucking night. So that's awesome. And they're not great shooters. They never have been. Even in college, actually, they didn't even go to college, but even in high school and in their G, what is it, the not the G League, but what was that league that they had if you didn't want to go to college, but you could play semi like collegiate ball with 18-year-olds and they were getting paid?
I know what you're talking about. I cannot for the life of me think of the name.
It's on the tip of my tongue, but I don't remember. Basically, these 18-year-olds who didn't want to go to college wanted to get paid, so they went to go play for this league, and these two twins have balled out quite a bit since coming to the league. Last year was a slow start. I know Asur actually dealt with some diabetic problems because he has diabetes, so they had to make sure he was cleared to play, and now they're both leading the I mean, they're leading the charge to their teams, man. You can see it. Detroit is very successful. Yeah, they're losing games now, but just a couple weeks ago, they were on a hot streak and they were leading, getting into that good spot of the East. I know the East is very weak. They're right now sitting at the eighth spot, only one game below 500. Cade is their main scorer, but man, dude, they like Asur really puts in a charge on the defensive front, and so does Isaiah Stewart for that team. And that's what they need because they don't have very many defensive guys. Amen, I think, does the same thing for the Rockets. And with how young they are, dude, they're unbelievable to watch. I truly believe that they are unbelievable to watch.
Yeah, it's kind of cool seeing. Yeah, now we're looking to more. I don't want to say we're a defensive center in the league because we certainly aren't, but there's like a really, really big emphasis on defense now. I mean, even just sticking with the Timberwolves, like last year, our identity was like a big, aggressive, physical defense. And that, I mean, we were a few stops away from going to the finals. Now Houston's, they're still top three defense. I should have pulled this up before I started blabbing about them.
I got you. Hold on.
Um, I mean, Houston's still a stellar defense this year. Like
Fourth.
that's a big part. What are they?
Fourth.
Fourth. Okay. Um, yeah, it was pretty close.
Right.
But now we're seeing a more emphasis on the defensive side of the ball, and you can see people like Jaden McDaniels getting their flowers. The Thompson twins getting their flowers. Dylan Brooks got a big deal. He's not a big prolific scorer, but he brings all the intangibles that a successful team just needs to have. So it's cool to kind of see that slow shift towards a more defensive centered league.
Yeah, I think, you know, this is kind of what we wanted to get into was were these second year guys to kind of build the new face of the NBA and the main guy of the actual face of the NBA coming up here shortly, and Tyler will talk about him is Victor Wembanyama. And you're talking about defense, man. He's literally statistically the best defensive player in the league right now. So that's
I saw this post on Instagram talking about how Wemby was like, yeah, in the top 100 percentile for like blocks, like block percentage, like top 99% for like rebound percentage, all this stuff. And in the comments, of course, they're like, yeah, I don't really think Wemby's actually that good of a defender. And this dude's like, he's leading literally every defensive statistical category except for like one. He's like, yeah, those numbers don't really matter though. People don't challenge him. Like people don't challenge him because the dude can jump to the free throw line from under the basket and block you. Like, yeah, dude's good.
as I say,
That
does
leads me that leads me to a question. I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget it. But with how he has progressed and now the ability to just knock down threes with ease, like where do you think he will finish? Like we have Kobe, LeBron, and MJ. We have that debate.
oh,
But
so we're
if
we're saying all time?
I'm just saying because he's only been in the league for a short amount of time and he's already putting up all these numbers. Like I said, I roasted him, and then he started doing good. And then I said that he is a player that has a cool head, and then he attacked Zubac. So I don't know. I'm not going to chime in. I'm just going to pose the question on if he keeps this up, where do you think he will end? Like if he continues for another, I don't know, 10 years down the road. And like do you think he's going to be up there with the stats of LeBron breaking all these records? Is he just going to soar through it? Is he going to obviously injury pending and everything like that? But I mean, he's on San Antonio doing this. He's
Right.
doing this single-handedly. What happens if he gets traded?
So there's two things that I see. One, if we're talking about just perfect scenario, he plays 20 years in the league just like LeBron and he does not get hurt. I could see him being a top three player of all time. Not saying he would be in that debate between Jordan and LeBron because I truly think Jordan and LeBron are in their own upper threshold of like just unbelievable athletes that carried the culture of the NBA. I think Wemby is a little bit different. And it's not because, and I hate to say it like this, but he's not from America. So, like,
Oh,
it's
wow,
hard
Brendan.
because I truly think that we didn't ever get to watch him when he was 16. Like, dude, people when LeBron was 16, they were still recording him. Like he was the number one thing at the age of 16. Now, MJ was a little bit different. He was, I think, a sophomore or junior in high school when he started getting his fame. But I mean, we didn't get to see Wemby truly evolve until he got here. Like, yeah, you heard of him, you watched some highlights from Europe, but till he got here and proved that he was worth staying here, he has shown out, and I love that for him. But we didn't get to watch him grow up. So I think in reality, those two are going to be in their upper threshold. But honestly, to each their own. I think he would be top three immediately. Now we have to see a couple things. He needs championships. He needs probably scoring titles. He needs MVPs. And it might be a little bit hard because in the league right now, there's a lot of damn good basketball players. Do you think he could ever beat Shea in an MVP race with how efficient Shea scores the ball?
Yeah, I guess that's true. He did. Well, I mean, he scored 52, but then lost. But I don't know.
I mean, it's hard because, and then Giannis is the same way. Giannis is an unbelievable player who does both ends of the court and isn't even, he is not even thought of right now in the MVP because Jokic has just carried his his title to this year's MVP again.
Gotcha.
So I think his first
I,
10 years in the league might be kind of hard to like get to those awards, but I truly think he will be a top three player if he never gets hurt.
yeah, I the whole MVP thing I think is something that we should talk about because that stuff kind of just upsets me the way that the MVP race is talked about. But I mean, we're only in year two of Wemby, right? Year two?
I
It's
think so, yeah.
2025 now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh God, this like dude, time doesn't exist anymore. Um yeah, I think at this trajectory, he could go down more than likely as one of the best of all time. But yeah, kind of like Brendan said, I mean we're so focused on how many rings you get, what your accolades are. I'm one of those people and part of the problem too. But like Wemby's got to win a few. He's got to win. I'd be willing to bet that dude could win 5 or 6 straight Defensive Player of the Year going at this rate. Like, I really think there's a chance that he could be like almost a culmination of the top 5 players of all time wrapped into one player because he's starting to get that shooting ability. We're not really sure if he's got that clutch of gene yet. He hasn't been super tested in the playoffs or anything like that. Defensively, he's a stud. He's got prowess like Dikembe Mutombo. He's got a bigger wingspan than Rudy Gobert. He blocks shots better than Jaren Jackson Jr. Like he's literally the my player in 2K. Like this dude could easily go down as one of the greatest of all time, but I'd be willing to bet he's probably like top 10-ish.
I feel like top 10 isn't generous or anything like that. I feel like that's
That's very
honestly as
valid.
accurate as you can get. Like top 5 is like if you're a Spurs fan. top three if you're an idiot. Or
I mean,
So
he certainly could be top three. It depends on how San Antonio treats this. If they're able to, build a good team around them, which right now you look at that core, like the only thing they're really going to lack in the next couple of years is going to be a point guard. But I think even that they basically have that covered. Like CP3 is a good veteran and a good leader, even though I'm personally not a huge fan of him. But like he's good for Wemby. So with Greg Popovich's health stuff, we don't know how much longer he's going to be coaching. So that could be something too. Where like you got to make sure you're bringing the right coach to utilize all these. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variables, but there's no reason to think why Wemby can't be top 10, top five.
now I'm gonna pose this question because obviously the best Spur of all time is Tim Duncan, I would say. Do you think with the projection right now, I know obviously we just chatted about top five, but really think about it. Do you think Victor Wembanyama could be better and more solidified as the best Spur than Tim Duncan?
regular season, maybe. Playoff, no.
Okay, so say it is hard to tell right now because he's never been in the playoffs. If he had a playoff series last year, we could kind of project it a little bit, but he's never had a playoff series. But so you're saying in regular season projection, he would be a better Spur than Tim Duncan.
Which one would I rather have on my team is kind of the question that you're asking.
No, I think in
Oh,
reality, I think all of us would take Victor Wembanyama
okay.
because of the fact of how dynamic he is. Do you think when his career is over, he will be known as the best Spur, or do you think Tim Duncan will be?
I personally don't think he will be considered the best Spur. I think that title is very much solidified to Tim Duncan. That's
I
that's
would
my
agree.
opinion. That's my opinion.
I think Tim Duncan just put a stamp on the
Yeah,
Spurs organization, just himself being
100%.
the best all time. You even hear the old
Yeah.
heads talking about like that dude had fundamentals like no tomorrow, and it's like Wemby doesn't. I mean Wemby has this development of fundamentals, being able to shoot threes and play defense, but Tim could post up fadeaway jumper, hitting elbow shots left and right, bank shotting off the back corner into the net. Like he did things that the old heads like, you know? So I think that just solidifies his stamp as the number one Spur. But man, dude, there's something in me that says if Vic just stays the way he's going, I would say he's the best Spur, man. Like I don't know. That's just me.
I mean it's like for me not being a resident of Texas, like if I were to put myself down there, Wemby would at a minimum have to have four titles. Like at a minimum to be considered better than Tim Duncan.
Right.
Unless unless it's like something where it's like okay, three finals and like the fourth one he almost won, but he was averaging a quadruple double. Like it's gonna like if you were to tell me like would you take peak Victor or peak Duncan? Like the only argument for Wemby is that his ceiling is probably higher, but like you,
Tim
how do you
gives you the
turn down Tim
championships.
Duncan?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Tim Duncan is just like yeah, the great fundamental. Like it's so difficult to try and justify. Yeah, I don't know.
I think the same argument here is if between Kevin Garnett and if Kevin Love stayed with the Wolves, who would have been the best Timberwolf of all time? Now we say Kevin Garnett because he stayed in Minnesota and came back to Minnesota longer than K Love was here. But dude, Kevin Love's projections, and if he would have been the number one scorer on that team for 5, 6 plus more years, he would have been the best Timberwolf of all time statistically.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a good comparison. Like
for us
Kevin Love
Minnesota
had
folks,
yeah, and Kevin Love was one hell of a player here in Minnesota. It's unfortunate that he had the push up injury, air quote there. But like, yeah, I think that could have been the same argument. Like, even if Kevin Love won a title here in Minnesota, I'd be willing to bet there's still a good chunk of people that'd be like, nah, dude, KG's like the GOAT. It's just kind of one of those like inherent bias.
right? So that was, that's a good conversation to kind of chat about is Wemby and Tim, and I think that's a good start of like that's the face, guys. That's the new face of the NBA. We talked about the transition between when Steph leaves. I think it'll go from Steph to Luca, like Luca and Shea, and then it'll transition into Wemby. I still think Shea and Luca are going to be the face of the league for a little bit, but Wemby will be in there just as a younger talent. So. Not saying Shea and Luca are old, but Wemby is 4 years younger than both of them. So
I do want to say one thing because this is also another thing that I saw from Instagram. I feel so bad for saying this because of how my track record has been, but I can't remember who said it. I think it was Anthony Davis. He was asked who's going to be the new face of the league, and they asked him, like, do you think it's going to be Victor Wembanyama or do you? He said no because it's like he said you go to the hood and you ask, like you look at the kids on who they strive to be, and they look at Ant and Ja. So I'm just saying, just because Victor, does what he does, I don't think he's going to be the new face of the league. But I feel like if anything, Ant honestly would be because one, he does everything that Wemby does, and two, he's a lot more expressive with
right.
what he does. That's just me though. That's
No,
that that's a
I
that's a
think
conversation for another
I think the
time.
whole
But
community would agree
but the new
because
face, I don't think Wemby has. That's just me. That's that's
right.
that's just
He
me.
could get his own little voice when he builds up some more credibility in the league. But yeah, you're right. Ja and Ant have shown out. They have given you unbelievable moments, poster picture framed moments. So that's why they're the face of the league. Kids look up to them. And it's better, it's easier because you're a shooting guard who's unbelievably athletic or a point guard who is unbelievably athletic. So people want to be like you, man. No one can be 7'6". Not
Right.
like but most people can be 6'1", 6'2", even smaller as long as they're athletic and work hard enough, but not many people can be 7'6". So I think that
Maybe that
that's
was a bad
also
thing to. That I'm pretty sure that was a bad thing to bring up in a 2 year topic that we had. But
no, it's fine.
yeah,
I
it's just
mean,
I
in
was just saying.
reality, we'll transition right here to just giving some flowers to some guys who are taking a step up this year. For me personally, I want to give the flowers to Taylor Hendricks. Had an unbelievable injury happen to him about a month ago, and he's out for the season. But when he was on the floor, man, he was balling for Utah. There's another guy that I know you want to give flowers to for Utah.
Keontae George. I mean, it's kind of a big step up for him. I know he has a big hole to fill. Um, but I mean the Jazz suck. Blatantly. They just
Right.
suck. Like
Yep.
it's bad. But looking at George's rookie year to now, like he's averaging more minutes, he's averaging more points, he's taking more shots, he's making more shots. And I mean, it's just he's getting that confidence rolling, but I feel like it's going to be like a Cade Cunningham kind of situation. You're kind of on a shitty team and you have to kind of do more than expected because even his offensive rating has gone up, his defensive rating has gone up. I mean, I think it's just the confidence that he has when you give these young guys the ball and you're able to let them do what they need to do. I just think it pans out for your team a lot more and it's a slow process, but I feel like Keontae George can handle the team. Like Jordan Clarkson, he was good. Not I don't want to say that he was good, but he was good for the Jazz last year, 2 years ago. But I mean, you still have people like Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler. So I mean, it's not bad, but he's at a guard spot where he's going to learn. So if you bring in a veteran like to mentor him, I feel like he's just going to flourish. The Jazz aren't going to really go anywhere, I feel like, but Keontae George is shaping up to be like a high IQ, intelligent basketball player. Maybe like CP3. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I got to give it to you, man. Keontae George is a great shout. I love the dude. He's starting at the PG spot for him, so he's really shined. They don't have very many scorers. I mean, in reality, they got Colin Sexton, they got Laurie Markin and John Collins, three guys who are probably mainly offensive guys. But once Colin Sexton gets traded away or gets released in the next couple of years, I don't see him sticking around. Same with John Collins. It's going to be the Laurie Markin and Keontae George show. Um, and I think it's going to be amazing. So I'm excited, man. I think it's a huge step in the right direction for the Jazz having this young point guard fill in and just do what he
As
needs to
much
do.
as much as it sucks to rely on somebody like that, it's still it's going to benefit you a lot more. And
Right. It's a
it
fresh
sucks.
of breath air when this team has been relatively mediocre and shitty for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Actually, can't say 5 years. When Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert left.
Yeah.
So,
But I don't know. Still big props to the man. Big props to the team for
right.
sticking around.
I think they're
But,
heading in the right direction if they keep drafting well. That's the main
yeah.
thing. They're drafting well, and that's what takes bad teams to mediocre teams to good teams. It starts slowly.